My name is Christine Gutierrez, and I'm the daughter of Evelyn Garcia, and I am the granddaughter of Maria Luisa Garcia and Gloria Alarion. And I am a mother to a beautiful daughter, Mar de Luz, and a wife to a magical man named Fernando Samalot. And really, I'm on a mission to help as many women as possible to feel seen, heard, and loved, and to create community and what I call this Diosahood, so that they know that in this sisterhood, they are seen, and that their stories, that nothing that they say can make them seem crazy, wrong, bad, dirty, shameful. And that's what I'm here to do.
You're listening to Undimmed, a podcast about living a clear life without dimmers. I'm Cecily Mack. That was Christine Gutierrez, a founder, a licensed therapist, and a published author who combines principles from modern therapy and ancient wisdom to help us access the wisdom that lives within us. On today's episode, she takes us on her own personal journey from confronting her struggles with alcohol and toxic relationships to later founding a global community called Diosahood, where she holds space for like-hearted women to gather, heal, and inspire one another. We talk about the significance of community and healing, how to maintain integrity and alignment with our true self, and how to always prioritize what matters most. So, Christine, it is such a delight to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here.
I don't like overusing the word spirituality, but there's a connection that you have to a divine, like feminine. There's a power in you that you use in your work. And I'm curious, when did that start? Is this something that came to you as a child? When did you know or kind of recognize that part of yourself?
The first time I can remember, I was a little girl, and I remember being around 7 or 8 years old and telling my mom, "Mom, isn't it weird that people don't know that there's more?" And I did like these little robot hands. And I said, "People just wake up and brush their teeth and go to work, and that's it?" I was so confused. And that was like my childlike way of saying, don't they understand the more? Don't they understand that there's this spiritual dimension that exists beyond this 3D, mundane world? Don't they know? And for a long time, as a little girl, I only used to dream of people's hands. And the hands in my dreams used to mean something. It would be like a symbol, or like this person's hands reminded me of chicken, and the chicken meant, family or something like this. And I would tell my mom these dreams, and my mom validated the dreams and made me feel, not crazy, right? She let me know that it's normal to have dreams and to analyze them, and my grandmother as well. But I remember feeling it. And I grew up Catholic. I grew up, went to a Catholic school, and I didn't necessarily connect with the religious aspect of it, but I remember connecting to the spiritual aspect of it. And I was very rebellious in school. And I remember telling my religion teacher, why is it that you can say that every kid has to accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior, but what if they were born in another country and they didn't hear about them? Children are innocent. And they shouldn't be evil or wrong because they were just born somewhere different. Wherever they were born, that's where God wanted them. So whatever God lives there, that's the God. I was so angry. And I was, this was, back in the day. So I was put on timeout and in the corner and all this stuff. And I was angry. I was really angry at it, actually. And this continued on, like this like anger for certain pieces of the religious aspect of my upbringing. And I remember this portion of the divine feminine that was missing from my religion. And I remember going to my room at night and praying and saying, I'm not going to do Our Father anymore. I'm only going to do Hail Marys, because there was this missing piece of the feminine. And so it started really young, and I've been following that call ever since, exploring this sense of the more.
I love it. I love it. And this story of your attention to hands and dreams of hands, what actually sticks out for me is that you were able to share this experience with your mother and your grandmother. And it sounds like they recognized you and they appreciated that you had this sensitivity and this magic at a really young age, where a lot of mothers and grandmothers would encourage a kid to kind of push that aside, get back to focusing on XYZ. That's really beautiful that you remember that. This is a conversation about how we've transformed, how our guests have arrived at this place of knowing that they want to live undimmed, that they want to live a fully lit and awake and present life, whether that's as an entrepreneur or a wife or a daughter or a mother or one of the many amazing roles that you hold as a woman. So, somewhere along the way, I know you, like so many of us, myself included, somewhere ended up dimming yourself. And like me, your experience was with alcohol. Can you share a little bit of your origin story of how you went from that child orientation with a fascination with the spiritual and the mystical and a little bit of energy around wanting to make sure that women are more present and represented? How did you kind of go into a place where you were not as present? Tell us that part of your journey.
I think that the disconnect came from seeing the ways in which the feminine were hurt. And so, in my very real experience of that, I first witnessed some of that dimming happening, right? With the kind of conditioning around religion, as I shared, right? Like the pushback from growing up and hearing people say, no, this is dumb, this is wrong. Like, you're supposed to believe what you believe, and that's it, right? And so, little
Mm,
pieces of your light start to get dimmed, whether you recognize it or not. And then at home, so much happens, right? And my parents, although beautiful and encouraging in many ways, were also products of abuse themselves. And though they did better than their parents, they were still abusive. Uh, my mother was really cold and disconnected and didn't know what to do beyond validating those dreams. She didn't know what to do with my big feelings. I had a lot of big
mm,
feelings and emotions, and she didn't know. She didn't know how to hold them. She didn't know how to hold herself. And my father, this New York City cop, right? And he's just constantly living in fear, very affectionate, but very fearful. And so he projected a lot of his fears on me, very verbally abusive when I was growing up because he was
mm,
scared. And I'll never forget, I remember one day years later, I grew up in New York and I had moved to Puerto Rico in my 20s after my master's. And I remember my dad stayed over my first apartment in Puerto Rico that I had on my own. And he had like this blow up mattress that it was next to my bed. And I remember he said, honey, I'm sorry that I parented you with so much fear.
mm.
And we held hands and I cried.
Oh, yeah.
and and I was like, yeah, you did. And thank you for saying that because it means something. And he did. It was just like I could see it so clearly, right? And now me being a mother and seeing the ways that I am able to hold my daughter's emotions and validate them. But really that's where it started, was that disconnect from, as a child, you have no way of knowing that your parents' voice is not your own. So you end up internalizing their voice of criticism, fear, pain, abuse, and you take it on as your own. And you go on to replicate that in your romantic relationships, in your friendships. And my self-esteem was shot because of that, right? So I went to go look for love in all the wrong places, dated the drug dealers. I was like,
Mm.
oh, you're a thug, you're selling drugs, you're a bad boy, let's do this. Like that, like I could like close my eyes. I would joke that I would like close my eyes and go into a bar. I was like, where is the one that is the most toxic? Beep, 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 beep. And I would like gravitate towards him and I would be like, found you. Like,
Wow.
and I can laugh at it now, of course, but it
Sure.
was horrible. It was horrible because I was living in this darkness and it was sexy for like 2 seconds. And the reality of it was that it was really painful. These were toxic men that were really jealous, really insecure, very abusive verbally. physically, cheating, lying, living in this constant state of fight or flight. And little by little, this was my world. And I was living kind of like this double life because I was always this bright light and this loving person that didn't go away, but it was being clouded by so much toxicity.
Yeah.
And then I kept on dimming my light in other ways by drinking. I never really explored with drugs. My drug of choice was drinking alcohol. And that was something that I didn't notice was happening. It happened slowly.
Yeah.
And that's what's so scary about, these toxic patterns is that, especially if you're living around other people that are doing them, it's so slow
Sure.
sometimes. And even if it's fast, it's slow and you don't realize it because you're living in that darkness. So you get used to smelling the shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a teacher that once said, if you have shit by your nose enough times, you're going to get used to smelling shit. You're not going to
Amen.
notice the smell. So that's what it was like. And that's really the journey of me losing my light.
Mm. Mm. And would you say that when you were drinking actively and going after all the wrong guys, and I can relate to part of this myself, was it just habit that kept continuing and you sort of passively ended up in a state that you didn't really notice you were getting yourself into? Or do you think you were drinking to numb feelings you didn't want to feel, or was it both?
I think it was both. I mean, I can remember what it feels like to be in so much pain because there's a feeling of this conscious part of you that knows that what you're doing doesn't feel good. We always know what doesn't feel good in our body if we for a moment. It doesn't mean that we're strong enough yet to pull ourselves out of that. But there's always a piece of us, if we're really quiet and honest with ourselves, that knows in our bones, this is off. This isn't right. This is hurting me. But I didn't have the strength yet, the energy yet, the self esteem yet, the self love, the self worth yet, and the willingness to get out of it. And so I numbed myself
Mm.
and I pretended I was having fun because
Yeah.
it was a type of fun, but it
Yeah.
was a type of fun that ended up hurting me
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and disconnecting me from the light in me.
Yeah. And it's, it just, we get into these habits and patterns and we kind of months and years can go by and we barely notice we're in some kind of a loop. It can be a passive loop and it feels normal. So we just
Yeah.
keep doing it. And then we're surrounded by people who are doing the same thing. So
Yeah.
we're in community doing that.
Yeah. We normalize it.
Yeah. So what years are we talking about? What years of your life are we referencing here where you're kind of in that habitual pattern or cycle?
I think my teens to my early 20s.
Okay.
And, this is why I always say this to my community and my clients. It wasn't like everything was hitting, like shit wasn't all hitting the fan. I was still doing good things. I was still expanding. I was still learning. I love school. I was still giving back. I was volunteering. I've always been that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
also simultaneously, I was destroying my spirit and disconnecting from myself. So the two things can both be true.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to name that because we think that we think such black and white terms, and it's not the case. This was a piece of my mystery school of life. And both of those things were happening at the same time. I was both working on myself and destroying myself. I was both loving myself and hating myself. I was both. That was the reality for a long time. And I would take two steps and then fall back again. I would
Yeah.
take three steps and then fall back again. And that too was part of my healing journey. There were moments when I would walk away from that toxic guy and get myself back together. And then I would feel weak and lonely and I would drink and I would
Mm-hmm.
go back. And then I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like, okay, I'll do it. I'm going to leave him eventually, but I'm not ready yet because I just need to fuck up a little bit more. I just need a little bit more, another hit, right? Another hit of
Yeah.
this toxic thing.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like sometimes when when you know that something's not right for you, but you still want a little hit, right? It's an
Totally.
addiction, and it was love addiction and alcohol addiction. It was both for me.
Yeah.
And it was an addiction to just escaping, right? And And little by little, I got sick and tired of it because it wasn't cute anymore. It was like, this is not going to bring you anywhere. This is something's wrong.
Yeah.
And after seeing it so many times, I was like, I'm going to destroy my life and I'm not going to be of integrity for the work that I'm doing in the world. Something has to change.
And this is the story I hear so much from so many incredible people. Life doesn't fall apart. There's no rock bottom. There's no crisis. Nobody grabs you and pulls you aside and says, I think you have a problem. But there's this little inkling inside that something is not right, or we're not fully embodied or fully expressed or fully showing up in a way we can. And something shifts. Tell us about that shift for you. How did you, the last time, know that something needed to change? And how did you change it?
Yeah, so for me, I guess there was a lot of mini rock bottoms, right? And everyone's, description of what a rock bottom looks like can vary greatly. And I think that's another reason why so many people they're so stuck on comparing themselves like, oh, this is not a rock bottom because it doesn't look like I'm, homeless on the street or drinking every single day or whatever that looks like. It's important to not compare because the truth is anything that's making you feel unwell in any way is a sort of rock bottom. And so for me, what that was it was actually, in my case, it actually was a little bit more of a real noticeable rock bottom. I was drinking sake home alone. I was like, that's weird. I remember having like this other conscious part of me, my awareness that said, this is weird, like looking down in my room into the experience that I was living in that said, you normally don't drink alone. This is strange, red flag, right? But tuck it away, keep going, keep drinking. And then I was so lonely. I remember the feelings of despair overwhelming me, that codependency, that love addiction part of me coming up. And I had this like hit of the love addiction piece of my journey come. And I was like, I'm going to call this toxic person that I know I shouldn't be with, that I'm going back and forth with. And I went, it was late at night, in 2 o'clock in the morning, something like this in Brooklyn. And I walked over to his apartment, hopped over a fence. Mind you, I'm not athletic. I do not do any sports. I'm not a person that climbs things. Okay. That was that liquid courage
Yeah.
and pain. And I
Yeah.
climbed a mother effing fence, had scratches on my arms, fell asleep on his stoop in Bushwick. It's still, I grew up in Bushwick. It was still not the best neighborhood. Okay. I could have been raped. I could have gotten hurt. And I waited for him to come back.
Wow.
And I was like, if this is not a sign that your life is progressively getting worse, because things were progressively getting worse for me, then I don't know what is. And I don't remember what happened exactly after that. I don't remember if that was like I don't remember if that was the last time. I can't tell you because I don't remember. But I do know that there were people that did start to say, I think you do have a problem, or I think that, and there were other people that were like, I don't think you have a problem, just drink less, right? It was both. And all of a sudden, I had this inner voice that was like, you need to get help. And you need to start naming that this is something that is not getting better. Because I had tried only drink when you're happy, only drink wine, only drink to celebrate. And it never worked because I always wanted more. So, but that was a big moment for me. That was a big moment for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have this moment, you realize this is not working. You realize you're going down the wrong path. What did you do? How did you get help? What was your next move?
I mean, I think the biggest thing was admitting it to myself. I was writing it in my journal. I was writing it over and over again. I was like, God, spirit, higher self, please help me. Help me to keep remembering this. I don't want to forget this because I've forgotten this before. My specific path was I called up a friend of mine who I used to get, party hard with. And I told her, you drink twice as hard as me. I think we both have a problem. You're not supposed to do this, but I did. And I was like, I think we should get help. And let's do it together. I need someone to do it with me. And we had talked about this before, that we thought we had a problem, but we weren't sure. And we decided to go to the movies one night, and we went to the movies. And in the movie, one of the characters, I forget the name of the movie, was being portrayed as someone that was drunk. And we were like, this is like a spiritual sign. This woman was like all they showed so many flashes of her being portrayed as this drunk, woman and falling. And we were like, this is us. And it was like
Yeah.
close to 10 p.m. And I said, I Googled, 10 p.m. AA meeting. I had heard of AA from my psychology, class, had gone to a meeting just for school. Um, and I ended up walking into a 10 p.m. meeting in the bottom of a church on 79th Street. And I
Hmm.
raised my hand. I said, hi, my name is Christine. I'm an alcoholic. I didn't really resonate with the words fully. I was like, this doesn't quite feel like my path, but it felt like the right path for the moment.
Hmm.
And it was me surrendering. It was me saying, hi, my name is Christine and I have a problem in front of a group of people to witness me. And my friend did the same. And she's also sober to this day, one day at a time. And
Mm.
so we got sober together, and that community really helped me. I needed that. Not everyone needs that, but I needed that. Um, I have a different way of going about it now, but for me, I did the things. I got the sponsor, I did the steps, and it helped me. I needed people that were doing the same thing. I didn't have a community around me that was sober or wanted to be sober. Now I have friends that choose to not drink, and many different variants of sobriety, and clear living, as you would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was my journey to getting sober.
How long ago was that?
Now, a little bit over 7 years.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
beautiful. And you've spoken of AA as a really important chapter for you. So, and it's obvious, we'll get to what your work is in the world today, but it's obvious that the relational element of any journey is such a priority and key thing for you. And you've described your AA experience as just that. And even just in these last moments, as finding community when you really needed it. How long did that last? And tell us how you end up not being in the AA community anymore or less so. How did that evolve over the last 7 years?
Yeah, so first to speak to what you said, community is key for me. I heal
Yeah.
in a communal way. I think many of us, as people do, especially women. And I thrive knowing that I'm not alone in a situation, and having that was what I needed to know that I wasn't alone and to stay accountable. Um, I slowly stopped going to as many meetings when I had a baby. My life started
Mm,
to change. I still always do my own spiritual things and have support, and I'm still very close to my sponsor.
mm,
It was a very synchronistic way that I met her. She had gone to Fordham as well. She's also a mom. She's also spiritual. She's also does yoga and all these things.
mm,
And so we're soul sisters, right? And so my connection remains in the way that now I'm connected to the people in the program, and I will go to a meeting that's more personal with the people that I've met, and we'll make our own meeting on a
mm,
Zoom call together, on a FaceTime call together. But in terms of like going into the meetings, and feeling like I have to go in order to stay sober, that's not my truth. I don't need to go to meetings to stay sober, but I need to stay around clear minded people that choose a life of well-being, right? And
mm-hmm.
doesn't have to mean that everyone is not drinking, but it has to mean that the majority of the people in my life aren't, or that are committed to living in a well way and that aren't using alcohol to escape. So that still remains the same. And that's how it shifted over the years. Before I was going, meeting a day, 3 meetings a week, and feeling like if I didn't go to 4 meetings and I wasn't, doing a good job, right? Like that kind of shame-based piece of it. But I
Yeah.
needed that accountability at the same time. So I don't knock it. I think it's actually a great way to train your brain to do something different. We know that habits take time to
Yeah.
shift, and that consistency and giving back and volunteering in the meetings and going to those groups and sharing and talking to your sponsor, it makes sense why it works. And
Yeah.
also, I believe that we all get to choose how our relationship changes with any kind of personal development that we do.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about that. I know for myself that there are a lot of relationships that have stayed the same or endured since I myself entered what I call my own clear life journey or chapter. And, a number of relationships also kind of concluded, like they ripened and we moved on. But then there's also this whole new universe of people with whom I don't believe I would have connected had I still been in this habitual dimming habit. And I know you have this very vibrant, powerful, global circle of women and friends and sisters, your Diosa hood. Taking that into consideration and also just your other elements of your personal life, how has your social life evolved since you paused drinking? And do you still spend time with people that you used to drink with? Like, how do you navigate that? It's the hardest thing for people to imagine. Many of the people listening today are flirting with the idea of stopping drinking alcohol.
Mhm.
It's something that might not feel right. They don't self identify necessarily as an alcoholic, but they also have this inkling that you and I know so well of something's not right. But the scariest part for most is the relational part, is the social part. How did you figure that out? How did you navigate it? How is it different now than it was?
Yeah, that's why I think it's so important I don't care if it's AA or anything. I think it's important to find people, especially in the beginning, that are on some sort of journey that is healthier. Even if it's like a running group or a place where you can't drink, right? Exploring hobbies or things with people that are not doing the connection based on alcohol, right? So I think that no matter how you find that, I think it's important in the beginning because you might be too tempted. The truth is, you have to keep it real with yourself. If you're in a place where you're still not strong enough to resist the temptation of drinking, and that's a desire that you truly have, then you have to be honest with yourself and say, I'm not ready to face this temptation in my journey yet, right? That's one piece. The second piece is, for me, I have my OG ghetto girls that I grew up with, and they all drink and they
I
go
love
hard.
it.
Yeah, they go hard. Okay. They just don't drink. They explore drugs, recreationally. They're just totally different world than I am. We're best
Mm-hmm.
friends for over 25, 30 years. We're like
Yeah.
sisters. But they're also healthy people in many other ways. Most of them actually are not addicted to anything and aren't using to escape anything. They actually have a pretty healthy relationship. But they party sometimes,
Yeah.
and they really support me in my decision. And I had to have a really
Mm.
serious conversation with them about them and tell them, because in the beginning they were like, I don't think you really have a problem. I was like, remember that time I got into a car with a random ass guy going out? That's not normal. Okay. So I had to like remind them of things. And then I also had to tell them,
Mhm.
please, I need this to be a boundary. You cannot tell me what you think. I know what I think from my experience. And drinking is not healthy for me, period.
Mm.
That's just what it is. So we're going to support that and we're going to stand by that decision and that choice. And we're not going to name it anything else or question it, because it takes a lot of strength for me to own that. And I need your support. So after I made that very clear, they actually were very supportive, and they would always have like apple cider, sparkly stuff, or like mocktails ready for me. We would do a birthday party. They would do jello shots, and they would have like this, like, you know, sober, alcohol free mocktail jelly shot. And they always made me feel
Mm.
included. So a big
It's
piece
beautiful.
for me, everyone's going to be different. I like to feel included in social gatherings. And one of my biggest fears was that when people were doing a cheers or doing certain things, that I would be left out. So with my close friends, I made it be known that it was really important to me to be included. And so we always had some sort of, mocktail kind of fancy thing that I could feel like I was part of it. I remember one time they were doing like this game, where they opened up I don't even know what it's called. Shotgun. I don't know. They open up a can and they have to drink it really, really fast. And they got me like a
Mm.
seltzer, and they were like, go, Christine. Oh my God, she's the drunkest one of all, and like they really support me. And these are silly ways that I do that with my best friends. And in my other life, right, the people that I've had
Mm.
the opportunity to meet, for sure, I wouldn't have met, because I really opened up a whole new world of my light, right? My light expanded even wider. And I was able to not only call it in, but keep it in. Because the thing is, you can still be magnetic and be drinking, but then
Yeah.
you're bound to fuck it up if
Yeah.
you're messing up. So I wasn't only able to attract it, but I was able to keep it and nurture these relationships that are my sober friends, that are my spiritual
Mm,
soul sisters.
yeah.
And that's who I spend time with. That's who I'm actually talking about my problems with and expanding my dreams with. My best friends are people that I see and we do our special things, but the people that I really bond with are my spiritual community and also my Diosa community that I've created.
Hmm. Love that. So, I just want to highlight a couple of things you noted about your what did you call them? Your ghetto girls, your ghetto sisterhood. A lot of us, if we've been drinking for 10, 20, 30 years, we have our party friends and they're fun and we're fun with them. And it's terrifying to think about. What are we going to just stop doing that? Are you going to stop inviting me to poker night? Are we going to not go dancing anymore? And if we have within us a desire, as you shared, you did and do, to not be left out or lose that social, fun, connective glue, you did two things that I think are really, really great lessons for people. Number one, you communicated upfront. Hey, this is something I would really appreciate your support in. I am making this change. Can we still do these fun things? And I'll just do them in my own way. And it sounds like that was very well received. And I imagine for most people, it probably would be done the right way. Second, and I'm personally really inspired by you in this, you made it about yourself. You're not declaring this is bad, we all shouldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. You said, this doesn't work for me. So I am making a choice for myself. And can we still stay loving and connected despite the fact I'm making a choice for myself that's different than the choice you're making for you? That's amazing. I imagine that is just, I mean, and we don't realize that. We don't have to be in this like division oriented way, particularly because there is a massive cultural shift happening. I don't know if you feel or see this where you are, but 5 years ago when I told people I wasn't drinking anymore, their first response was, "Oh my God, I didn't know you had a problem." And now it's, "Oh my God, that's so great. How'd you do it? You must feel amazing." Do you see this in your community too?
Yeah, I definitely think that this wellness, personal development kind of movement has started to shift in that it's not only people that are addicts that are giving up alcohol. People are giving up alcohol for many different reasons to be more connected to themselves, to have more vitality, to feel more productive, to have less regrets, to have more energy, to have more health. People care about these things more now, or it's been, promoted in such a way that people are starting to realize that alcohol might be something that is not helpful. And there's also a lot more research that backs that the detrimental use of alcohol. So I think that both on a wellness level, but also on a scientific level, people are realizing that doesn't not great for you. But even with that, I still, like you said, I think it's really important for me to name what's good for me. I never
Mm-hmm.
want to make someone feel bad or wrong for doing what they want. And I never want to shame someone. And if someone actually has a problem, right, that's a different story. And they'll come to that in their own journey and they'll know that I'm a safe place to come to because I've done it before.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine that. And so, what advice do you have for those sisters and brothers who are listening today? People who have an inkling that something is not quite right, or their habitual dimming habit, whether it's alcohol or some other drugs or even shopping, sex, work, exercise, whatever it is. What advice do you have for people who are considering making a change but are maybe afraid?
Yeah, it's scary to let go of our identity, right? It's scary to know a version of ourselves and to have to walk this mysterious unknown bridge into another version of ourselves and another new identity that we don't know. It's normal and it's valid. It's valid to be scared. And I think normalizing our human feelings and saying that it is scary. It's scary to do new things. But if you're feeling that, I think that we need to be extremely present to that inner voice and that intuitive voice that is orienting us towards our highest self, the best version of ourselves. I like to see this like a video game, and it's like you hear this intuitive voice and it says, beep, beep, beep. There's a red flag here. You might want to stop drinking or you want to reduce the drinking. And every time you listen to that voice, you get points and you get to jump up the level.
Mm,
And
mm,
every time that you don't listen to that inner voice, it's like, boop, you fall down. You
yeah.
might get another chance, Not everyone gets another chance, depending on
Mm,
how dark you go. That's true too. But most of us get more chances, right?
yeah.
But it becomes harder and harder. So I really think that it's important to see life is a mystery school. We
Mm,
get spiritual initiations that help challenge us to grow. You're going to be scared to take the leap into a new identity, but every single time I like to tell myself, you're getting your points.
mm,
These are your points to up level to the next version of your highest destiny. And there's always going to be gifts there. And the gifts being alignment with oneself, freedom, peace, conscious, amazing community, opportunities, all these things come from this place of listening to that. So write a list of all the ways and all the things that your intuition or that gut or that feeling inside of you is telling you that you're moving away from, and start to look at it and say, what is one action step that I can take towards making a change in this area? If that's
yeah.
hiring a therapist, if that's joining an app, if that's going to a meeting, doing one small actionable step towards breaking that habit is going to be revolutionary for them.
Mm. And you are such a living, breathing, heartful embodiment of that. I think about this video game metaphor you use. You've had a lot of step ups and ding dings over the last 7 years. Tell us about what you're doing now. You have created something absolutely magical. And I think our listeners would be so inspired to hear how you have leveled up since your own pause.
So I have been doing this women's empowerment work for over 15 years. And this comes in the form of my annual Diosa retreat. Diosa is the Spanish word for goddess. And it's really
Mm,
about creating spaces for women to break open, to cry, to look at the places within themselves where there were thorns placed on them because of their trauma or their pain, and to go in a somatic level and really remove them, release them, have
mm,
community around them, witnessing them, reclaiming themselves, remembering their power, remembering their worthiness. We do this online through mentorships, through trainings, and through the community itself of women getting to network with each other, getting to meet deeper friendships, these soul sisters that we talked about that are conscious on the same journey. And so this is our Diosa community, the Diosa Hood. And I created a book called I Am Diosa, A Journey to Healing Deep, Loving Yourself, and Coming Back Home to Soul, a beautiful
mm,
deck, Wisdom del Alma. And all of these things were, I mean, I grew up in Bushwick. I didn't have role models that looked like me, that sounded like me doing any of this. It was the traditional jobs, and that was it. If you escaped living in the hood, it was because you were a cop or a teacher or something like that. And I remember walking into Barnes and Nobles and looking through the bookshelves and seeing only white women, and then Don Miguel Ruiz, who was like one Latino male in his like 60s, I think, at this point,
hmm.
and Dr. Clarissa Pincola Estes, who was like in her 70s, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think it's time for a new voice,
Amen.
Latina voice.
Amen.
And I declared that I was gonna be what I wanted to see, and to be that role model for other Latina women, women of color, but all women that have gone through this adversity and have chosen to rise. And so I'm really proud of it. I really believe in following our big dreams. And
Yeah.
I know that my sobriety is a big piece of the glue that
Mm,
holds my life and my blessings together. I see my
mm,
sobriety as the glue of my life, and it holds all of my blessings. It keeps
mm,
all of my blessings intact, and it allows me to maintain my blessings and my gifts, and to stay in an attitude of gratitude, and I'll figure it out. Like my
hmm,
mantra is, I'll figure this out.
hmm.
And life tests us, right? We have a
Yeah.
lot of messed up things that happen, but that is my mantra over and over again. And it continues to serve me to keep doing the work, right? I continue to be a student of this work.
Yeah. And you speak to this sobriety as soul glue. It's so beautiful. I mean, you started Diosa Hood and this work that you do 15 years ago, and about halfway through, you cut alcohol out of your life. Did anything change, or did anything shift as a result of that? Or do you feel like you've just kind of been on a progression and that was just one puzzle piece of it?
Well, I started to feel more of integrity. I mean, there's nothing bigger than that, right? Like there was a part of me that was still living this double life, and I was hiding, right? I I,
Yeah.
I got to meet an embodied version of my work. I always knew she was there, but I wasn't yet living in that
Mm,
reality. And so to finally arrive in it and to see myself fulfill my destiny. Because what happens is we get glimpses of who we want to be and the dreams we want to have, but then we mess up and we keep choosing the things that bring us away from our destiny. And so
mm,
we don't get to live the dream that are so planted in us. So for me to be able to finally arrive and live embodied in the dream that spirit planted in me has been the greatest gift of all. And obviously there's physical manifestations of like blessings that have come, my marriage, my daughter, my ability to make more money. Like all of these things are also a big piece of my sobriety, but that's not the main piece. The main piece is fully living in this alignment and feeling like I did it. I arrived in this version of myself that I always wanted to be.
so beautiful. So one of my last, if not my last question, if you could reach back into time and communicate with that version of you that was drinking sake alone or scaling fences to find toxic men, whatever we've done in our past and those memories we have, and tell her something, what would you tell her from over here?
You're going to make it.
Mm.
You're going to make it.
Awesome. Choking me up. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So how do our listeners find you? How do we find your community, your book, your circle? Do you want to refer them to your Instagram website? How do they find you?
Yeah, you can come to my Instagram, Cosmic Christine. My website is christineg.tv. My book, I Am Diosa, and my deck, Wisdom del Alma, can be found wherever books are sold. And hit me up.
Amazing. You're such a gracious, generous guest. Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing with us as you have today. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Besitos.
Besitos. Be well. Christine Gutierrez is the founder of Diosa, a global community and soon-to-be app where like-hearted women gather to heal, grow, and thrive. She's also a licensed psychotherapist, a life coach, an expert in self-worth, and an author. Her book is called I Am Diosa, a journey to healing deep, loving yourself, and coming back home to soul. You've been listening to Undimmed. I'm Cecily Mack. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're inspired, we really appreciate a rating. It really helps others find us. Undimmed is part of a larger movement called Clear Life. It's an exploration of what it means to live clear without dimmers that can interfere with our intentional and present way of being. It's really about tuning into our truest selves. To learn more about Clear Life, you can go to my website, cecilymack.com, that's CECILYMAK, or subscribe to my Substack, also under my name. Undimmed is produced by Joanne Jennings. Mateo Schimpf mixed and mastered the show, and the great Laura and Sarah composed and recorded our music. Thank you for joining us. Be well.